Hey pencil, तुम्हारा podcast cancel. Welcome back, guys, to Those Dyslexic Guys.
Hello.
Hello,
Hey, so I'm Kailash and Pranav.
is Pranav.
Yeah, Pranav is still Pranav.
Yes, I have not changed
And
yet.
we're back again.
Yeah, we're back.
Yes, and as you can hear, the audio quality is slightly better.
Marginally.
Yeah, baby steps, baby steps.
Yep.
And we have a sponsor.
That's how fast we roll. We have a sponsor, and we're very grateful and thankful for our sponsor today, who is Tech91. You can check them out
Yeah.
at tech91.in. That is,
Yes.
and I will phonetically sound this out because,
Oh my God.
why not? Tango Echo Charlie Hotel dot India November. Oh wait, I spelled it wrong. Oops, I forgot the 91.
It's okay. So the 91 goes in there. You know where it goes.
Yeah,
Don't worry
it's
about it.
tech91.in.
Yeah, you should check them out. They're system integrators and all-around tech advice and buying advice.
Yeah, gaming, home, workstation, computers. These guys will take care of your computer needs. They will not rip you off and give you shitty RAMs, and they'll give you what you need for what you want to do.
Even if they do rip you off, you will have an entertaining experience that will...
You will have either a top-notch system, or it'll be so visually pleasing with bright lights and liquid cooling. You'll be very, very happy.
Yes, more RGB equals more better.
Yeah, man, that's how teraflops are made. RGB equals teraflops.
Yes. Speaking of which, the future console wars are starting to heat up, are they not?
You mean actually because of global warming, or just because they're going to take a lot of thermal energy, or that?
Yes, it's going to be a huge farm of PS5s on the Arctic trying to melt it. No, it's Sony versus Microsoft yet again. Sony being very cagey about their information, while Microsoft, again, like what they did with the Xbox One X, they are pushing the teraflops numbers. They're trying to get in ahead of Sony so that they get... of course, I guess Sony beat them to the PS4 Pro. So they're trying to come out as a technological leader, even though teraflops don't mean anything much now.
Really?
Yeah, the Xbox Series X. Can we just call it Scarlet? When I say Scarlet, I mean the Series X. I like that code name, honestly, because it was at least distinctive.
You know what I just realized? The Xbox Series X is triple X, because it's got 3 X's. While we're doing this, just searching triple X movies. Hopefully, I will not get flagged.
Oh yeah, you mean the Vin Diesel movies, the Vin Diesel masterpiece.
Yeah, do you realize how hard it is to find those movies? State of the Union, Return of Xander. Huh.
Yeah, look for Xander Cage. Exactly.
I just said triple X movies win, and that's how I got it. Until I had to put win, I didn't get anything.
Oh god. So right.
So Microsoft is being very, very tease well. Sony's being a recluse French maiden.
Sony is going to be show don't tell, I think, because they're just going to inundate us with all the information in one shot. Hopefully trying to bowl us over to buy that expensive thing, whatever it's going to be.
The only thing I know that Xbox has is that cloud gaming, which is I'm quite skeptical, considering how Stadia did.
xCloud, yeah. xCloud is going to be very interesting. But if anyone can do it, it could be Microsoft. Again, this is what we said.
This is the same thing we said with Google.
Yeah, exactly. If anyone could do it with Google. But Microsoft has a huge stake in this because they don't want to lose the existing market of Xbox Live, right? Because Xbox Live is like a very burgeoning online multiplayer arena, marketplace, all of that. So they don't want to lose that just by in the pursuit of adding new features. So they have, again, maybe it's not possible right now. The technology is not there yet, but it could be possible that they would get some medium latency games going on.
So, yeah, according to statcounter.com, PlayStation is 57 point something, Xbox is 41, and Nintendo is 1.
What?
The percentage of market share in North America.
Wow.
You should look at the world.
Yeah, you should look at Japan especially also.
Yeah, because Sony has Nintendo to deal with there.
Yeah, I don't know how it's split up, whether Sony is dominating on Nintendo or maybe both. and the Xbox is definitely second place.
Worldwide, according to the same website, is PlayStation at 68, Xbox at 31, Nintendo
Wow.
barely at 1, and Android at 0. That's pretty high for an Android. Like, wow. So PUBG is the future. Mobile gaming is the future. Huh.
Oh man, but I think mobile gaming is the future. But
The Razer phone, the ROG phones.
are the people under 20 or whatever still playing PC games? I'm sure they are, right? They are. They must be.
Or do you want to look at that the market of gaming is increased because of mobile gaming? That now you don't need a big system. You can just download a game and I'm making air quotes,
Yeah.
double air quotes, playing
Yeah,
games on
yeah.
your mobile.
Yeah, I know exactly. Play games. That's fine actually, honestly, because it makes gaming more accessible, and obviously I want more people to be exposed to gaming. But like you're saying, it's a quality versus quantity kind of thing. I would prefer a very distilled gaming experience. And I
True,
think it's
true.
the same with movies as well, right? You don't want, sometimes you do, but I mean sometimes you want to play Jetpack Joyride for some time.
Or
and
Pokemon
that's
Go. That's true
Oh,
gamers,
Pokemon
man.
Go.
True gamers
Yeah,
play Pokemon Go.
Pokemon Go is an excellent example of how to use the hardware well.
Oh yeah, oh yeah.
And yeah. Even though it might be considered trite.
And of course, they're not stealing all the data to construct your room and selling it off to the CIA. That totally is not happening.
That you know.
Yeah. Niantic, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, they definitely are not
Niantic.
an offshoot of some Splinter Cell underground company.
Oh shit, seriously, are they?
Yeah.
Well, okay, go on.
Remember Niantic
moving
had
on.
some ties
Moving
with
on.
Snapchat.
Okay, moving on. We should all, we don't want to get
Attacked by the US
Dominate.
government.
marginalized. What is that called? Neutralized, I guess. Or like
Terminated.
terminated, erased. I have been erased. Anyways, have you seen Eraser?
The movie.
Yes.
Let me just take a look at. Again, why is
Okay,
it so?
anyways, it's all of this gonna get cut out from because we're gonna have to go back. Let's talk about.
Oh yeah, of course I've seen Eraser.
Yeah, you have been erased.
Yes, of course. It's the same premise as Terminator. Arnold Schwarzenegger meets a
Exactly.
girl, he falls in love with some kid, and then he chooses not to be a good guy.
But I'm human now.
And yet he's still bulletproof. So yeah, coming back, I think the game's playing the same way as it's done before. Xbox showing everything, waiting for PlayStation. PlayStation drops, people are sad.
Now maybe, and then the games drop, and then people get slowly warmed up to the idea of getting a PlayStation.
one thing
Because I
I'm-
think right now that's where PlayStation 4 is right now.
Yeah, and especially with Call of Duty cross-platform, which is an incredible, just the fact that they've been able to pull it off so well that you can sit in your PC, play against someone on a PlayStation, and have an enjoyable experience while cursing them. Incredible.
I think that's all Phil Spencer's doing in a sense because Sony wouldn't have moved on that if Microsoft didn't move on that first.
Mhm.
I think Microsoft kind of opened the floodgates a little bit with their Play Anywhere kind of thing, and then Sony was forced their hand to, because of competitive forces, they had to have an equivalent. So they finally made crossplay happen, which is awesome.
Yeah, finally, after how much of teasing for how many decades?
Yes. Yeah. And again, we live in strange times. The Kojima game is going to come to PC, which is
Hey, I'm
amazing.
still waiting for RDR2 on PC. Let that drop.
Oh yeah. Yeah, RDR2 will definitely be coming to PC. That's going to be amazing. And like Rockstar is being coy about it as usual. Anyways, so the Xbox One Series X,
Yes.
Xbox Scarlet. The Scarlet has 12 teraflops, I believe. I'm not
Yes,
sure
12
about this,
teraflops, variable rate shading, hardware accelerated,
Yeah.
DirectX ray tracing.
Yes, give me that jog in the sweet jargon.
Quick resume
Yes.
for multiple games. My bad. Quick resume for multiple games. Smart delivery, and it looks like an Alexa with vents.
Wait, I haven't seen it actually. How does it look?
I'm just looking at
Oh, is it
news
like
Xbox.
that big tower thing,
Yeah.
right? It looks like a... Okay. It's a tiny little... It looks like a... Actually, it looks like one of the Mac Pros, but like...
Not the one that looks
Not-
like a trash can.
Not the trash can one, not the circular one, but like if the trash can was... if they made that a cuboid, it's basically that.
So they have SSD storage, 120 FPS support. Interesting.
Yeah, it'll be 4K. I doubt it'll be 4K.
I doubt it'll be
128.
4K too. I think.
Yeah, so it'll be 4K No, it'll be 4K, maybe 60. 4K 60, I'm sure is good for native games like Halo and stuff. Should definitely hit 4K 60.
Oh, and they have complete backward compatibility for all 4 generations of gaming. That is Xbox 360, original Xbox games, and favorite titles. Okay, that's pretty cool.
Oh my god!
And Xbox
is that
One
good?
gaming.
Oh my god! How? So Xbox One is fine because it's a PC, so who cares? Xbox 360, is there going to be any hardware components? Maybe it's probably all software at this point, right?
Yeah, at this point, they're just gonna fly it on from the cloud and put it in your PC, in your Xbox.
Yeah, that's also possible that they could simulate part of it in the cloud and then send the data to you.
Yeah, interesting. So eventually everything will be online. Do you think they'll try to revive their the Xbox Active and what was that thing called?
Connect.
Yes, the Xbox. Do you think they're gonna bring the Xbox Connect back with this?
I think motion controls is dead, kind of, because I think VR has taken over that. So HoloLens and all of that stuff has to take the burden of all the motion control stuff, I would think. Because that makes more sense in that environment because you're anyways deciding to engage in an unnatural, to an extent, interaction with a machine.
But what if I want to play? What's the game called? Fruit Samurai? Forgot the name of this game.
Fruit Ninja.
Fruit Ninja.
Yeah. You cannot be a samurai. He has no honor. He's a fruit ninja.
Yeah, but a samurai does have honor, and a ninja. Well,
Yeah, that's why I'm saying he has no honor. That's why he's a fruit ninja.
okay. I got to admit that game was fun.
Yes.
So yeah, and then what is?
Yeah. So yeah, it's not a pure teraflops battle anymore because even though it's a 12 teraflop Xbox, whatever, right? And maybe the PS would probably be equivalent or maybe a little less. Who cares? It's more about, like you said, it's about variable rate shading. It's about the HDMI implementation. It's about frame rate. Like
Can they give me a
adaptive-
remote that can control all my devices in one?
Yeah,
That's what it's
also
about.
That's also true. That's exactly true. It's about how good it is as a set-top box replacement, right? Like how good
yeah.
it is.
Because that's what they want
as
to
a
do for a
media
long
center,
time, and
yeah.
I'm not sure they ever did it properly.
Yeah, because the Xbox One, they tried it. I don't know how the X is with all of that, but the One was a little clunky with that. So you had to switch on stuff in particular order, otherwise it wouldn't really work.
Really.
Yeah.
So if I turn on my
So-
smart bulb
Yeah,
before I
maybe-
turn
but
on my
maybe
TV,
it's
it won't
at the-
work.
I don't think it's the smart bulb kind of thing, but it's more like if you switched on your audio receiver before something, like then you wouldn't get audio and then you'd have to power cycle it or something like that. So it didn't like all those things to like whenever you have off the shelf AV, you always have those little quirks like that. So that's not their fault particularly. But I think DXR, the DirectX ray tracing implementation, is going to be very important going forward because I think that it's both in is definitely going to be in both consoles because Microsoft has definitely announced it. I don't know about Sony. I'm sure they have an equivalent in the works as well.
Do you think that the Xbox,
Yes.
the new Xbox X or a Triple X, will not have the red ring of that?
Oh, I don't think the red ring of that.
Or
was
will
a
it just
thing.
catch fire and then you're cool?
Yeah, I think at some point they said that it was over 30% of the consoles or something like that red ring, right? A particular SKU. That was before the Jasper revision of the motherboard. So before they shrunk it down and had to.
52% new survey. I mean, that's on 2000.
Oh.
That means half.
Wow.
You buy one, you have a chance of it dying.
It as somewhere being 50%, and I'm sure I thought I was exaggerating by saying that figure. So, shit, it's 50%.
Console rate failures. I mean, according to ING in 2009, Xbox is 54, PlayStation is 10, the Wii is 6.
Aw.
I love the
That's
fact that they put the
adorable.
Wii.
It's still 6%. How
Yeah.
could they? Why does that thing fail, dude? It's
Because
a
someone
hamster
fell on
running
it
that
or
thing.
like kicked it.
Yeah, probably. Yeah.
Nintendo
yeah,
Sports
yeah.
is intense or Mario Kart. Somebody would have broken something. I'm sure my Mario Kart is not on the Wii, and someone's gonna kill me for that.
Yeah, they threw the Wii remote at the TV, which broke the TV. Then, in a fit of rage, they broke the Wii.
Ha! Mario Kart is there for the Wii. I'm glad that one person will not come after my life for this.
Oh yeah, there are many Mario Karts for the Wii. There's even Mario Kart 8, which has an infinity symbol because it's 8.
And isn't Mario Kart 8 Deluxe and then Mario Kart 8?
Yeah, it's
Interesting.
probably infinite
Well,
iterations of Mario Kart 8. as well.
Moving to teraflops and the question that we were talking about, or topic we were talking about before, which is quantum mechanics, and you have something to say about that, guy?
Oh, I mean, so yeah, we thought. I mean, since it's a subject that has somehow come up, even though this is our second episode, this is 2.5-ish episode. Quantum mechanics has tangentially come up in. So we thought we'd at least lay out the landscape of quantum mechanics, and Pranav is gonna act as the audience's.
No acting. I have zero idea about quantum mechanics. All I know
but
is
you're gonna be the audience surrogate.
Sure. My science information, my knowledge of science dies at the sixth standard, where mitochondria is the powerhouse of the cell. Pretty much that.
Yeah. There are the interesting thing is the field of quantum biology is a very burgeoning one right now. So that one you should watch out for, because there are papers written insinuating that quantum processes are used by plants in photosynthesis and different processes
Okay,
like that.
Kai, before we get ahead of ourselves, if you
course.
could put it in 10 lines, 10 words or less, what is quantum mechanics in your understanding?
These are not my words, so
Sure.
these are Sean Carroll's words, but I think there's a very apt summation of it. Every theory of the world says that when you look at the world, you would see what's there. You would measure reality. And
Okay.
that's what you're trying to measure. So it doesn't make a distinction between measurement and reality. Let's not dwell on too much on what measurement really means right now, right?
You mean metric? You don't mean metric and imperial systems, right?
No.
Okay.
I'm talking about any sort of measurement, and we'll get into what measurement means. It's basically on that one thing that a whole branch of problems of quantum mechanics arise. So, when any normal theory says that when you look at the world, you would measure the world.
Yeah.
Quantum mechanics says that the world is fundamentally different from what you measure it. So when situations where measurement is going on looks completely different to situations where measurement is not happening.
Oh, so is it that because the observed changes?
Yeah, in a sense. But the term observer is a misnomer.
Okay.
It doesn't mean that it has to be a conscious being.
Okay.
It can be anything that. So, right. Let's start with the basics. Right. We have all of this physics was started by the Greeks. I mean, at least first Western record we have of it is the Greeks. So Aristotle had his own version of physics where he says that if I have an object and I push on it, it continues moving, but then it stops. So you
Okay.
need in his physics and in his metaphysics, because his metaphysics came from his physics. So his physics didn't have it wasn't Newtonian in the sense. It was Aristotelian physics, where he didn't understand that friction was a thing that you added later.
Okay.
He thought that everything needed to be moved, and
Okay.
everything would eventually come to a stop if you didn't keep pushing on it, right? So then he invented something called a prime mover, and that's one of the first philosophical arguments for God. And you can understand why that Aristotle now thought that the universe must have a what he called a telos, right? It must have a reason. It must have a reason to exist, or a goal to accomplish. So
Okay,
everything was trying
okay.
to accomplish to its goal for Aristotle, right?
So raison
the
d'etre?
reason why, it's raison d'etre, right? Exactly, like the thing that if a ball falls to the ground, it just wants to be closer to the earth, so that's why it falls to the ground.
If Caesar takes over the Roman Empire, that's because Caesar takes over the Roman Empire.
I don't know about whether he's applied it to sociology or not, but if that time was anything like this one, he definitely would have tried. So that was Aristotle's view of it.
Okay.
And of course, Newton came along and revolutionized that and said, no, actually, of course, credit where credit is due. It's not Newton who first came up with that. It's this guy in 1150 something in somewhere in the Middle East, Ibn Sina. He was a
How do you even Sina?
Ibn Sina. He was an Islamic doctor, basically, and he did physics and optics in his free time.
Wow.
So,
Wow.
Yeah, exactly. It's annoying, right?
Yeah, man.
And he came up with the idea. He was the first person to propose the idea of momentum. Of course, he suggested it as a kind of a proof by contradiction or something like that of like vacuum states. Like he said, surely you can't believe that a vacuum would exist, but because if a vacuum existed, then an object, if you pushed on it, would just continue moving in a straight line and wouldn't stop. if it wasn't touching anything and it was in a vacuum.
Yeah.
So he
just as a correction, he was born. He was born. Yeah, he was born in 980 and died in 1037. So, Ibn Sina.
oh wow, it's earlier than 11.
Yeah, Book of Healing, Philosophical and Scientific Encyclopedia, the Canon of Medicine, Medical Encyclopedia. In Islamic Golden Age, writers and thinkers, physician, one of the most significant physicians, astronomers, thinkers, writers of the Islamic Golden Age, a father of modern medicine. Wow. Take it, Hippocrates.
Exactly. Good luck, Hippocrates. Exactly. Screw you, Hippocrates. Who? Ibn Sina, yeah. So after that, the rest is more commonly known. This is the stuff we learn in school, which is, and this is going to be important when we're going to talk about quantum mechanics, because then,
Sure.
because classical mechanics is basically the foundation of everything. Because
Okay.
Newton, in that sense, that's why he's heralded as a genius, because he founded a way to write physical theories that was used by subsequent physical theories.
Okay.
Yeah, so Newton basically formulated physics, and he came up with Newtonian mechanics in the Principia Mathematica.
Okay.
So that's what. So the important values in Newton's theory were a static stage where you calculated positions and velocities.
Okay.
So you have positions of an object and velocities of an object, right? And this is, I mean, can
The
you
positions
name,
of an object and velocities of an object. Okay. Okay, I can
yeah,
understand that.
Yeah, and then whatever you
The
apply.
Principia Mathematica.
Yeah.
That's Newton's book?
Yeah, it's his. It was his. Whatever his thesis on all of this stuff.
The Philosophia Naturalis Principia Mathematica.
Principia Mathematica.
Because when you look at Principia Mathematica, you'll get Alfred North Whitehead and Bertrand Russell's book.
Oh, there's another one.
Yeah, that's what I was.
Oh, that is the reformulation of mathematics they did in the early 20th.
Oh,
21st
is that?
century.
Okay.
Yes.
They
In the early 20th century, yeah, they reformulated mathematics.
Originally published in 1910. Yep, exact, on the money.
Cool. So, yeah, weird
It
world.
was first published in 1687. Almost 400 odd years. Yeah, 400 odd years. Damn.
Crazy. So yeah, he came up with the idea that everything has a position and velocity, and then all you have to do is track the position and velocity, and you can figure out the motions of planets, balls, anything. So, and there's some important aspects of Newtonian physics that people I don't think appreciate, which is
Alright.
that it's completely reversible.
What do you mean it's
So,
completely
if-
reversible?
So in Newtonian physics, if you have a billiard table,
Sure.
you can play the whole billiard game backwards. Exactly, if you knew the position of the if you knew the positions and velocities of the final billiard balls, you could, in theory, play the whole thing backwards and integrate all the way up to get to the initial position.
So. Oh, okay. So,
It didn't
okay.
have very rigid notions of chaos yet.
Oh, because it's a little hard if if I'm sure most listeners are imagining a billiards table, a white ball hitting a bunch of balls and they're scattering around randomly, and each turn afterwards plotting that. Okay, that's interesting.
So yeah, so you have a classical chaos theory, but there is no limit. So there is no limit in principle to your power of resolution. So you can always resolve the position and momentum and the position and all of these characters, the position and velocity of an object, to arbitrary precision.
Arbitrary precision. So there is some
Yeah.
room for error. Is that the right way of is my understanding right?
There is room for errors in practice, but there are no room for errors in principle.
Oh yeah, of course. The second I try to do it, even with all this information in my hand, I will still mess up.
Yeah, that's fine. That's in practice.
Cool.
But the theory says that you can measure to arbitrarily many decimal places.
Wow.
So then this guy called Pierre-Simon Laplace, who is, we're getting to quantum mechanics. I'm sorry for this long-winded intro, but it's important. We are only going to hopefully we will only do the history once and we'll never do this again. So Pierre-Simon Laplace is a guy who famously known for telling Napoleon to fuck off. Famously known for telling Napoleon that when Napoleon asked him when he presented his theory of physics and the universe and celestial objects and stuff, he said, "Where is God in this theory?" And he's like, "Sire, I have no need for that hypothesis." So he's famous for saying,
Oh, damn.
yeah,
and he didn't get his head cut off.
yeah, he didn't get his head cut off, exactly. So he played his cards right just after the French Revolution, and he still didn't get his head cut off. So it's fine.
Je n'ai pas besoin de cette hypothesis. I have no need for that hypothesis.
Nice.
When Napoleon, when hearing about his latest book, said, "Lace, tell me you have written this large book on the system of the universe and have never ever even mentioned his creator. I have no need for that hypothesis." Badass.
That is badass.
That is
So
badass.
that's a mic drop moment.
Even the French were like, "Sacre bleu."
The important thing about Newton is that he explained gravity,
Sure.
but he didn't explain the mechanism for gravity. In fact, he said in the Philosophiae Naturalis Principia Mathematica, it's a mouthful, that's why you don't say it all. But in the Principia, he says that he doesn't know the mechanism for gravity. He leaves it up to
So he knows what gravity is, but he doesn't know how gravity is.
he doesn't know how it works, because he thinks he's asking the same question as you would ask if you are like the first time you encountered a magnet and then you try to stick it to a metal object. How does the magnet know that the metal object is there? Like, how does it know that how does it know that I need to attract a metal object a finite distance away? Right? We understand that now as the magnetic field. So we have a magnetic field that pervades all of space, and then the magnet, like, by manipulating the magnetic field, the magnet reaches out and tries to grab the ion.
I'm just thinking how Drax from Guardians of the Galaxy will take it. We know why, we know what gravity, but not why or who gravity.
So that's no, but you get what I mean.
I get
that was
what you
the
mean.
That was the same problem with gravity. That Newton couldn't explain why the sun would grab the earth and try to move around it. But
It happened.
Laplace mathematically reformulated Newton's theory
Okay.
as with something called the Laplacian, which is basically the idea that and like Laplacian mechanics, right? So that the idea is that now there is a field which is basically the opposite of a particle. A particle is in a single position and has a single value,
Okay.
right? And a field is in all positions and it can have a single value or it can have multiple values, but it's in all positions. It's a thing that pervades all positions, is basically a number in space, in
Okay.
all points of space. Okay, there's all points of space, which there's a number that represents the strength of a field. Oh, that's a field. So then then what happens is now you can think about the sun being the earth being in the gravitational field of the sun. So the space that's right in front of the sun field has a particular number, which is the gravitational field in the local area of the sun. And then slightly further away, that's a lower number. And slightly further away, that's a lower number. And slightly further away, that's a lower number.
Oh. Okay. Now I get it.
Yeah, now you can explain field theory as something that respects locality.
That reduces the further you are away from it, as long as the strength of the pull is not strong enough.
Is not strong, exactly, right? So it reduces as the inverse square law would suggest of Newton.
So the more number of calls you have from your mom at a certain time of the day, that proves that's proportional to how screwed you are.
I don't know if that's the right analogy.
It's okay. We gotta keep this entertaining.
Yes.
No,
right.
wait. The number of calls you have from your mom versus the distance you are from your house proves how proportionally screwed you are.
Oh yeah, perfect.
Yeah, that works.
That actually
makes sense.
Works.
Yes, physics.
Anyways, so we're done. So that was Laplace. He reformulated as field theory, and field theory will become important. And then Einstein reformulated it as relativistic field theory.
All right.
But it's still a field theory.
Yes.
Right now, okay. And then what happened is on the other side we have quantum mechanics, the famous experiment to illustrate quantum mechanics, and the one that you did probably in high school is the double slit experiment.
Yes. I didn't do it, but I watched it and figured out what. Isn't that also explaining superposition?
Yeah, it explains most of the aspects. It explains superposition. It also explains decoherence. It explains a bunch of collapse of the wave function. It explains many aspects of quantum mechanics. That's why it's used as a favorite example. And Richard Feynman also loved to use it as his favorite example. So the idea is that you have two slits in a screen that's facing a wall, and then you try to launch, and these slits can be in a piece of paper in principle, right? They're just two slits that are very close by, that are about they are very small,
Okay.
but they can be. It depends on what you're trying to block with them. Right now, say we're trying to block a bunch of ball bearings. You're trying to block these 1 centimeter big ball bearings, and we are launching them out of a gun. And then that machine gun shoots it at this wall with two slits, and then behind that there's a screen to catch these particles, and then we're trying to see where those things would hit. And what you'd expect is behind the screen you'd have two bands, like anything else. And but if you do this experiment with electrons, instead of a band, you get something which is called an interference pattern, which implies that the electron is behaving like a wave, like the electrons are behaving like a wave, and they interfere with each other. So you get multiple bands, more than two.
Or like dropping a bunch of stones in the water.
Yes, exactly. Ripples on a water. That's a very good analogy. Exactly, and it's not surprising now. So then that is immediately not surprising. Then because you could just think, okay, you know what, molecules all together. Maybe it's a group emergent behavior of molecules together, because water molecules do behave like a fluid once you have like trillions of them. But a single water molecule is not a fluid, right? It's a particle.
Yes.
Yeah, so maybe they thought that's what's happening with electrons or photons or whatever. But if you send one photon at a time, you still get an interference pattern. If you send one photon at a time and you keep the shutter of the screen open for a very long time, so you collect all the light of all these many photons hitting maybe like one every minute or something, over hundreds of minutes, you will get the same pattern as if you had let all of them go at one shot.
Kai, we can choose to cut this part out or not. Wasn't Richard Feynman? I remember reading in his book that.
Yeah.
Surely you're joking, Mr. Feynman, that UV light can't penetrate through glass. So any glass that says it has UV coating is bullshit. Or rather, is a fad, or it's not that.
Oh, I'll have to check on that. I'm not sure.
I'll give you an exact quote. They gave out dark glasses that you could watch it with. Dark glasses 20 miles away. You couldn't see a damn thing through the dark glasses. The Trinity test.
The Los Alamos thing.
Yes. Not
Trinity test.
The Jornado del Muerto Desert of New Mexico. The 20 kiloton blast. The Manhattan Project.
Is it Trinity test?
The Trinity test, codename Trinity.
Yes.
So they said you couldn't see a damn thing with through those glasses. So I figured the only thing that could hurt your eyes, bright light can never hurt your eyes, is ultraviolet light. So I got behind the truck's windshield because ultraviolet light can't go through glass.
Yeah, but he still got blinded for a bit though, asshole.
Oh, okay. I thought that meant that, hey, if UV light, UV protection isn't.
Yeah.
It's just a marketing
thing.
thing.
The arrogant physicist not respecting nature and like the understanding what he had created, because then he did go blind for a bit because it was like fucking bright as fuck. Yeah, but glasses are definitely only transparent to the optical spectrum, so they could have different properties outside that. I will have to check. Glass is definitely most glass is definitely not penetrative for IR. It was only penetrative one way, right? It goes in but it doesn't come out.
Okay.
So that's why your car heats up in the sunlight. It's because the IR gets trapped inside.
Okay. That's pretty interesting, huh?
Yeah. So I will check what happens in the UV thing.
Yeah, because I remember reading that in Feynman's book, and I remember someone telling me, "Oh, your glass has UV protection. You know that UV can't go through plastic or glass." I said, "Oh, really? I didn't know that." Well,
it definitely check. It must depend on the strength, because there are definitely UV laser goggles that are protective. They're orange, so that. Right. So there are. So we have you have this thing where you send even a single particle at a time, and then it produces the interference pattern, which implies that it's a single particle that's interfering with itself, which means it's going through both slits at the same time. So it's a superposition of being in both slits at the same time.
And we don't know why it does that, but we just know it does that.
A more fundamental question: what is the electron, or what does the fundamental particle even look like? Is it a billiard ball? Is it a wave? Is it both? Is it neither? Is it something else?
Is this a debate between string theory and field theory?
Not yet, because string theory is yet another abstraction over field theory.
Okay.
So obviously science is a building abstraction, and we've only been at it for 300 years in earnest since Newton.
Yeah. We've done things for longer and worse.
Yes, exactly. So quantum mechanics now is a established field. Quantum field theory, which is a amalgamation of quantum mechanics and field theory together, is the prevailing dominant paradigm in which most physics is done right now.
Really? Is
Yeah.
that what theoretical and applied physics?
Yeah, theoretical and applied physics that applies to quantum mechanics, obviously. Unless you're doing general relativity, you're working with quantum mechanics.
Interesting, because most
so-
of my physics jargon comes from the Big Bang theory.
Yeah, and that's all relativity, and there are some, of course, quantum mechanical stuff because you have Alan Guth and Andre Linde with inflation and many other things. Anders Albrecht, quantum cosmology, which is again, as you'd imagine, is a cutting edge field because it's applying quantum mechanical principles to the entire cosmos.
Wow.
Right. So right now we are at the point where we don't know what the hell the electron or the fundamental particle is doing. So at that point, like everything is made of atoms, right? The Greeks knew this. Democritus, the first guy, he is the first guy to propose that everything was made out of atoms. And then atom means indivisible in Greek. They jumped the gun because clearly atoms are divisible. They found that out in the early 1900s. And Marie Curie.
We found it out very, very painfully.
Yeah, we had to sacrifice Marie Curie because she didn't know, and she knew.
She
but
and her
didn't-
husband.
No, yeah. But oddly enough, Pierre died of a car crash, or like he was run over by a horse cart or something. He didn't die of radiation poisoning.
Yeah, I'm sure it would have gotten to him. Maybe he saved himself.
Yes, maybe.
A street accident. Great.
Yeah.
He was crossing the lane and he
it's-
fell down. And
exactly.
under a horse-driven cart.
Yep. So weird, right?
He was apparently he was absent-minded. Wow, interesting. So
Yeah.
he did not look both ways and cross the street.
You have to look both ways, kiddies. Even if you have a Nobel Prize.
He also got even he got a Nobel Prize. Wow, that's nice.
Yeah.
Huh.
Yeah. So all of this was prepared. Then they found out that it splits into fundamental particles. So we have the electrons, protons, and neutrons. And the the protons and neutrons are further made of quarks and gluons. Yeah, the three quarks and a gluon and a few gluons hold the proton together. So that's the standard model of particle physics, which
Okay.
is all the particles, which are the bosons, which are the force carriers, like the photon, or the graviton, which would be the theoretical particle, which would be hypothesized for gravity.
Okay.
The idea of a photon. Okay, the photon.
Is it
and I
light
think
emitting
this is where-
photon? Is that how you think of it?
Yeah. It's a single packet of light.
Okay.
1905, the photoelectric effect. I think it was 1901. In fact, I'm not sure. It was between 1900 and 1905 that Einstein released
1905
his,
on the money. Albert Einstein.
1905.
Yes. Photoelectric effect.
the photoelectric effect. So he is the first guy to realize that what we call light, right, is basically comes in chunks. It always has to come in chunks.
Okay.
And there's a historical reason that we can get to on another podcast, but it's a long.
Is it similar to how internet packets come in chunks?
Kind of, in the sense that there's the smallest amount of light energy required to produce a single photon of light, and it's proportional to the wavelength.
Mm-hmm.
So the longer the wavelength of light, the less energy it requires. But you can't make an arbitrarily long photon of infinitesimally small energy, or you can't make something of infinitesimally small wavelength without having infinite energy. So it's an uncertainty relationship between, and you can see where the uncertainties come in. This is
All you Breaking Bad fans must be throwing your hats down.
Yes, it's related to meth making in no ways. It's Heisenberg's uncertainty principle says that with a fundamental particle,
Okay.
if you're trying to measure its position, the more uncertain its momentum becomes. The more accurately you try to measure its momentum, the more uncertain its position becomes. Because of that, there's another pair which is called an energy time uncertainty. So if you know the energy of a particle exactly, then you're not unsure when it arrives. And if you know exactly when it arrives, then you're unsure about its energy.
Okay, that just went way above my head.
Okay, it's a thing that happens. I think this gets conflated with quantum mechanics a lot.
Okay.
And the reason why, because it's cool and but it actually comes from wave mechanics and something called
Okay.
Fourier analysis. You have a wave. Say you have a guitar string, you're playing a wave, it's a particular pitch.
Fine.
Right? It's a sine wave. So it's a sine wave, it's a curvy thing. Real waves have curves. What Fourier's theorem says that any sine wave can be or any wave, it doesn't matter what shape, can be decomposed into a sum of sine waves, okay, of different frequencies. So you can imagine if you want to make something that's a square wave, right? So something that peaks up and then squares and then peaks down.
Okay.
You add many sine waves together to get a sharp corner. Eventually, you start sharpening the corners. When you first only add 1 or 2 or 3 sine waves, it doesn't look anything like the original shape. But as you keep adding more and more and more sine waves, it starts approximating any waveform shape you want. And that's basically called Fourier analysis or Fourier transforms. And you can transform from one to another. So you can go from the time domain into the frequency domain and vice versa.
So the more sine waves you add together,
Yeah. A shorter signal that you can make, like a more tight wave that you can make.
which has more energy because of its size.
It's more energy because of the amount of waves you had to add to get to that, right? So imagine that's what nature was doing when she was making a high energy wave, that she had to add all of the low energy waves together.
So can you say that the whole wave is greater than the sum of the parts of the wave?
It's about the same as the sum of the parts
Okay.
of the wave. It's equal to approaching the sums of the parts of the wave.
Okay.
So as you get to smaller and smaller and smaller distances, you need more and more and more waves to approximate that shape. And that's where the energy time uncertainty comes from, right? So as you get more and more defined in time, your energy is becoming more and more unbounded because you have to put more and more energy to get it to a smaller and smaller distance. So it's a property of waves that lends this property to quantum mechanics. It's not quantum mechanics especially, it's wave mechanics. And because quantum mechanics is wave mechanics, that's why quantum mechanics shares this.
All right. I think I'm understanding that. It's a little confusing, but yeah, I think it makes sense.
It's more a visual analogy. I couldn't think of an auditory one that was easy. These are the conundrums, right? So now we have this very confusing theory where you have something called superposition, where a thing can be in this position and that position at the same time, or it's technically that it's not in this position nor this position, it's neither or both or something else involving these two positions, but not either or. It's not so it's called a superposition state, right?
Yeah.
And we have a superposition state. Then you have collapse of the wave function, which is when you try to say, now I know that this weird thing is happening even with a single photon, so I try to observe by putting a camera or a detector at the slits, saying that, hey, I want to observe which slit the photon goes into so that I can finally answer this question. When that happens, then the interference pattern goes away. What you see are two slits on the wall. Light behaves exactly like it was made of particles. So that's another compounding mystery, and probably the weirdest one of quantum mechanics, and the one that lends itself to all the Deepak Chopra woo and all of that stuff.
That
Because-
light is a particle.
No, that's light's like it's a probability wave till you observe it, and then it becomes a particle.
So how does it lend to the Deepak Chopra woo?
Because then you can imply it's just a small step from that correct statement to the incorrect statement of then you bring the world into existence by looking at it, right?
Oh, damn!
Right?
Okay. That we're observing it and hence creating it. We are the creators of our own creation.
Exactly. We are tapped into the Akashic field, and therefore we're like, whatever.
God made
Just
himself
don't-
in man's image, so as man looks at him, his image is created.
It's just God taking selfies. So
It's God taking selfies. That's
bad
why they say and then there was a light.
Yeah. It's just cosmic
At
flash.
first there was a
It's fine.
light. At first there was a light.
In the beginning, there was
In
light.
the beginning,
no,
there was
in
light.
in the beginning, there was the word, and the word was God. Well, the word was with God. But I don't remember where let there be light. I don't know if it's ever actually said.
Yeah, because that's usually what I scream out when I turn on. In the beginning, there was light. It's a documentary. Interesting. Oh, well, all I do understand is a lot of things happen. We don't know why. We're learning more, and it's an interesting field. What are the real world implications of all of this, guy? How does it? Why should I care about this?
You right now you shouldn't care about any of the new stuff, because I think the new stuff is almost done being relevant to the real world. I think I kind of expressed this sentiment even in the first podcast, that quantum mechanics is basically done in the sense of, like, unlike any other theory, right? Quantum mechanics says how, like, in classical mechanics, you could have many forces. You could have so many forces. You could have unseen forces. You could have forces for love. You could have anything. Because the theory
Really?
didn't tell you. Because the theory. No. I'm saying you have to go and do the experiment to rule out this.
You suddenly got me like, oh, I put my hand out. Feel the love. Feel the lift of love of my fist to your face.
No, I wasn't going to be all wooey. It's just I'm not going to go into the woo.
I was about
It's
to break
the,
into Elton John's "Can You Feel the Love Tonight."
Can you feel? Okay, so we must refrain from doing that. So you have in classical mechanics, you have all these forces that could be unseen, but you have to measure and check whether they exist. The theory doesn't tell you whether these forces exist or not. But unlike that, quantum theory makes some certain predictions about the world, given that certain facts are true. So we have that gravity exists, therefore, right? And since every other force has a force-carrying particle associated with it, we assume, because you have the W and Z vector bosons for the strong and weak nuclear forces, and then you have the photon for the electromagnetic force. So we assume that there will be something for the gravitational force, like light waves are there for light, and then as you look closely at light waves, they resolve into photons. You would expect that gravity would exert gravitational waves, which we discovered recently, because they're so incredibly weak. It took them 100 years since they were postulated to discover them.
And a gigantic, massive machine. Is that what the Super Collider? LIGO.
Yes. The Laser Interferometer Gravitational Wave Observatory.
Oh, the LIGO. Okay, so I always thought CERN did it.
No. So the LIGO is a different collaboration in Gran Sasso, and it's two corners of the US.
What about a Large Hadron Collider? How did that fit into all of this?
So the Large Hadron Collider is looking for the Higgs field.
Okay.
The Higgs field is tangentially related. So I'll just get back to that.
Sure.
So LIGO discovered gravitational waves. So they are the incredibly weak. They are the equivalent of light waves for gravity.
Okay.
It is light waves are emitted, or photons are emitted when a charged particle accelerates, right?
Yes.
Okay, so you have a charged particle. It accelerates. It creates an electromagnetic field. It creates a disturbance in the electromagnetic field, which propagates as light. Same way, mass disturbs space-time, and since space-time is dynamical because of Einstein, you can have a wave propagate through space-time, and that wave is a gravitational wave. And quantum mechanics predicts, or quantum field theory predicts, that particle, that wave should resolve into a particle, which should be a graviton, ideally. So that's the hypothetical particle of gravity.
Okay, it's still not yet confirmed or either.
Correct.
Okay.
And the same way, so then the Higgs is also a perfect example of this. But like you're asking about the LHC and the Higgs. The Higgs boson was hypothesized in the 60s. There were a bunch of people, Robert Brout, Francois Anglaire, Peter Higgs, John Kibble. There were like a bunch of people who proposed this particular idea. The idea was that you needed all the bosons for the other forces, except for the photon. The photon is massless.
Okay.
Therefore, it travels at the speed of light. And that explains why light is a long-range force. because photons are massless, they can travel incredibly long distances.
Yeah, that makes sense.
That makes sense, right? It's intuitively makes sense.
Yeah.
So the same thing. So they have the same. So they, like I said, they have the W and Z vector bosons for the strong and weak nuclear forces.
Okay.
Okay, and those needed to the theory. The standard model at that time said that they would also be massless and they would also be traveling at the speed of light. But that disagreed with experiment because the strong nuclear force was confined to inside the nucleus. Because the strong nuclear force is what keeps the protons together.
All right, and all right.
And then, and the same way, the weak nuclear force is responsible for radioactive decay. Again, a very short range force compared to the compared to the electromagnetic force.
Yeah,
Right?
I can understand that. I didn't know
Yeah, so the whole
radioactivity
idea-
decay is because of the short range. Okay, interesting.
Right? So then they had to cook up something to make these bosons not travel at the speed of light and have mass.
Yes.
And therefore, they came up with a particle. It was called a scalar field, which is basically, like I said, a field is a number that pervades of all of space. Right?
Yeah.
So a scalar field is basically, unlike a magnetic field which can be positive or negative, a scalar field is always positive. Like it's just one value. Like gravity is always attractive. It's a thing. You can imagine it as a magnetic monopole, and that's why magnetic monopoles are interesting, even though you can never physically make one.
Okay.
Is that imagine a magnet with only one pole. So you would imagine that the lines of force would just
Go from one direction.
would just emanate in concentric circles from the point of the magnet because it has no other pole to go to.
Sure, yeah, it just goes around itself, yeah.
Yeah. So that's basically the idea of a scalar field.
Okay.
So it's a field which doesn't have a direction in space. Any place you are in space, it has that value. And the only thing special about the Higgs field is that in empty space, most of the fields are close to zero. But the Higgs field is not close to zero. It rests at a place that's not zero.
Wow.
Therefore, it gives all the particles that require mass, and then they travel sub the speed of light, and therefore particles can exist. And that's why people say, when they talk about the Higgs, that it's the reason why particles have mass.
The God particle.
The God particle.
The nickname strongly
whatever
disliked by many physicists, including himself.
Yes. Oh yeah, Peter Higgs himself, yeah. Because Peter Higgs is a very unassuming guy, and I think that's why he got the credit, because he's very self-effacing, and he's like, yeah, I did the math and it kind of worked out. It's cool.
So even after they did the math, they had needed an experiment to prove that it worked. They can't just say 2 + 2 is 4, so we'll accept it as 4.
Exactly.
Right.
So that's the Higgs. That was the LHC, which is a very powerful collider, but not a very accurate collider. So that's why they have to do it billions of times.
Wow.
And they look for statistical bumps in one place and saying like, this is where Richard Feynman comes in. And like, this is Richard Feynman's proper, one of his seminal contributions to physics is the Feynman diagram.
Okay.
The Feynman diagram is basically a visual representation of a formula which has got to do with like atomic collisions or fundamental particle interactions. In quantum mechanics and quantum field theory, you could have particles that turn into each other. You can have a photon turn into an electron and a positron, which is the anti-electron.
Okay.
So because the electron and the positron have the opposite electrical charge, when they annihilate together, they have zero net electric charge, and they only have a little bit of energy.
So they cancel each other out?
Which they cancel each other out, but they only have a little bit of energy, which is light.
Okay.
Right? Light is a small amount of energy. It's a packet of energy. So same way, you can have that process go forward or backward. So you can have the light spontaneously split into a positron and electron, or you can have a positron and electron annihilate to release a gamma ray. Okay, you can have these processes go forward and backwards. And he drew a bunch of squiggly lines to represent these, and they're basically used in atomic physics.
Oh, wow.
And it's beautiful how elegantly simple. I mean, otherwise this stuff would be much more incomprehensible, right? If it wasn't so for those simple diagrams. So, and they have to do with the probabilities. The vertexes have to do with the probabilities of observing one interaction versus another and all of that. So the amount of vertexes that are there in the diagram basically is a description of how complicated, therefore how likely the event is to happen. Therefore, if you want the Higgs to decay into 2 photons, which is what they finally found. They found the 2 photons that the Higgs was supposed to decay into. And you can calculate with these Feynman diagrams how likely it is for that thing to happen.
Okay, okay.
And that's, unlike Newton's theory, this is where quantum mechanics differs, because there is different. Because there, now you can tell. So if I say, like Deepak Chopra, I say, hey, there's a particle in my brain that is a consciousness particle that makes me aware of, like, whatever.
Sure.
I'm like Yuri Geller. Like, this is like a very old reference for the millennials. No one would know who Yuri Geller is. My dad would know who Yuri Geller is. Anyways, he's a guy who's got famous for bending spoons telepathically.
What?
Supposedly. Yeah.
I thought you were misspelling Yuri Gagarin or whoever that dude was.
No.
I mean, they're both Yuris.
Geller.
Gagarin, yeah.
They're both Yuris.
Okay, so how do you spell this, the Soviet cosmonaut?
Geller, I think. Geller. Geller, like Ross Geller.
Yuri. I mean, so URI, not YURI.
Yeah.
Yuri Geller.
Yeah, Yuri Geller. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah. Yuri like Uzi.
Yuri like Uzi. He's a little Uzi. Okay.
Yeah. So he used to so basically imagine like you are claiming that that's true, right? You have a force carrying particle that I can use to bend spoons from my mind.
Mm-hmm.
This is the claim. In Newtonian mechanics, I would have to prove a negative. I would have to say that I would have to make an experiment that would disprove this claim, and that's the only way I would be able to tell that this, that's the only evidence that I would be able to give against this, something like this. Right?
Mm-hmm.
Besides the fact that it's not probable and whatever, but I could never give negative proof of this kind of influence. I mean, you could do an experiment, but you get what I mean. In principle, it's hard.
Sure.
But in quantum mechanics, you can say because of something called crossing symmetry. So if you have a Feynman diagram, all you have to do is rotate the diagram 90 degrees, and that is also a valid Feynman diagram. So in the example that I gave you, if you have a photon that decays into an electron and a positron, you should be able to smash an electron and positron together to make photons.
Mm-hmm.
And that proves that the same way now, if you want to find the Higgs, you say the Higgs fields exists. So if you say, okay, so if I put this much energy into these particles and bombard them together, then I should make a Higgs boson with this probability.
Mm-hmm.
And therefore, any particle that's left in the standard model is more weakly interacting than the Higgs. Therefore, the Higgs required the Large Hadron Collider to produce, right?
All right.
So it's not something that happens. There's never going to be a Higgs boson that gets produced near you. You're only interacting with the Higgs field. We are only interacting with the Higgs field.
Okay.
A boson is a significant excitation of the field. So the field is always there. Like I said, the field is a number that's always there. It's non-zero. But 100 and this is a field. This is an excitation of that field, a particular excitation of that field at 125 MeV, I think.
So is it comparable to saying that I'm going to walk into a shop, say I'm going to crash the next car and win the lottery, and do that and win the lottery? The chance of it happening near you naturally are very, very low. Pretty much.
Yeah. You'd probably win 10 lotteries before that happens.
So me commanding it happening because it's a result of the field rather than something part of the field.
There's a scientist called Lawrence Krauss. He calls it cosmic sadomasochism. So you have to spank the vacuum hard enough so that you can get particles out of it. So you have to push enough energy into the
you gotta choke it
vacuum. Whatever. You have to invest some energy into it. It's basically
like how you have to start those old timey cars with a crank and turn it around a few times before the engine, or starting a chainsaw.
Starting a chainsaw.
That makes sense.
So to produce, and the Higgs boson decays in a zeptosecond, which is 10 to the minus 15 or something, which is whatever.
Wait, how slow is that?
It's very fast because it's a zeptosecond, 10 to the minus 15.
All I imagine is SpongeBob meme dressed up as a speedster saying, "You want to see me do that? You want to see me do that again?"
Yeah,
that fast?
Exactly.
Much faster.
Yeah,
cool.
Much faster. One with 14, decimal, 14 zeros, then a 1.
Okay. Interesting. The Deepak Chopra part is quite interesting, where that you can somehow influence it because it changes. You're not too sure why it happens and what it happens.
Yeah, and it's a very tempting idea. And Niels Bohr and Werner Heisenberg were basically, it's called the Copenhagen interpretation of quantum mechanics. And these are okay, let's put the interpretations on the table and then I'll stop, because then it's a complicated topic and it's easy to get mired in the details.
Yeah, you're doing a great job explaining it, Kai. I'm all but not napping.
Thank you. This is hard. Even professional.
That's what she said. Even professional scientists have problems. What about unprofessional scientists? What do they say? Just show your hand, read the lines. Cool. That's where the boson is. Just go catch it.
Chase the boson.
Put your hands together. If this line connects, that's where your boson is.
Yeah, exactly. So there are various interpretations of quantum mechanics, because now the whole idea was, you're correct, the original interpretation of quantum mechanics, and which is what made Einstein uncomfortable to an extent.
Okay.
One aspect of what made Einstein uncomfortable with quantum mechanics is that Bohr and Heisenberg were suggesting that reality is, like you're saying, to an extent malleable to observation. So
Okay.
there is no external reality until you observe it. So there's no such thing as the position of a particle.
Wait, Kai. That means the famous Schrodinger's cat in a box with something that'll kill it. It's dead and alive at the same time, and until you open it, it's everything.
Yeah. So go on, explain the Schrodinger cat thing.
Great.
Please.
I'm on the spot. I like dogs more. Okay, it's a thought experiment that.
Yeah, but that's perfect. So you can kill the cat. It's fine.
Yeah. It's a cat put in a sealed box with its life or death made dependent on the state of the subatomic particle. Yeah, there's a thought experiment. Quite interesting. That I'm sure most of us have heard of it. I'm sure some of us would have liked to try it at some point. That the cat is alive and dead at the same time, and until you open it, you do not know until you do something to interact with it.
And it's best to have an example, especially when we're talking about interpretations of quantum mechanics. So I think we're going to use this Schrodinger's cat example for everything, even though that's the
most cliche go-to.
Yeah, it's the most cliche go-to way.
Or could you consider a different way? You know, when you're meeting somebody and you ask them where they are and they say they're on their way. They're on the way at the same time, haven't left their house.
It has to be this kind of domino chain of a single particle knocking down the whole cat. Because that's the argument of, like, the important thing is that where the delineation of classical physics ends and where quantum mechanics begins, right? Where does Newton's gravity end and where does quantum gravity begin? 50 atoms, can they be in superposition? 500 atoms, 5,000 atoms, 5 million atoms, 5 trillion? Like, those are the kind of questions that were immediately spawned from quantum mechanics. And Bohr and Heisenberg basically said reality is not as real as you expect. And if nature is telling us that it's chancy and these are all of whatever, we shouldn't try to interpret it. We shouldn't try to tell nature what to do. We should just shut up and calculate. And that is the view of that was called the Copenhagen interpretation.
All right.
And then you have Erwin Schrödinger, because he was with Einstein. He was also, even though he made the equation, Schrödinger's equation, which is the equivalent for Newtonian, like F is equal to ma, right? So it's awesome because, like I said, Newton is influential. Like, you can see Newton's hand in all of this in a sense, because Newton's is F is equal to ma. So you have the force, and you know that times of mass and acceleration.
Okay.
And based on breaking that formula down with calculus, you can figure out that with all you need is the positions and velocities of the object, and then you can calculate everything else. Same way, the Schrödinger equation is a wave equation which does the same thing for the wave function, for this thing called psi, which is a pitchfork symbol, that Trishul symbol.
Oh, I see that. Yes, it's something I know. It's not the artist psi.
Yeah, it's not the artist psi. It's a pitchfork symbol, and that stands for the wave function.
I love how I googled PSY and I got psi before I could get the
PH, yeah, because before the physics one, yeah.
Yeah. Oh, I spelled it wrong. PSI.
Yeah. No, but that's phi.
Wait. Is it PSY or PSI?
Oh, it's PS. I don't know if it's
It is PSI. I'm going.
Oh, it's PSI. Yeah.
It is PSI.
I thought you said PH. Yeah, I thought you said PHI.
No.
Which is phi.
That's phi.
So psi is the wave function, right? So all of this is done, and so that's why Erwin Schrödinger was trying to point out the ridiculousness of quantum mechanics when he proposed the Schrodinger's cat.
Oh, is that he didn't mean that seriously? He just meant that is how ridiculous it is.
Yeah, he wasn't smoking from his pipe and be like, whoa, it's like how cool the world would be. Yeah, he didn't say
He didn't
that.
take some of Freud's pipe and say, okay, cool, let's lie down on a couch and think of the dumbest thing we can.
Yeah, this is some dynamite weed. No, he did not.
Cocaine,
do
technically
that.
cocaine.
Yeah, technically cocaine.
Or
So
Coca-Cola as they used to call it back in the day.
yeah, that's for reals, by the way.
Yeah, man, that is actually for real. I don't know why we don't live in that society than this.
Shit, we should definitely do an episode on that.
What a stress when you can just drink some straight cocaine from a can.
You should read Brave New World.
It's on my list. It is on my list. Even the other book that he wrote, The Letters to Seeing or something, how he got his eyesight back.
Oh, I haven't read that one. Okay, cool. I will check it out. So Erwin Schrödinger proposed this as a worrying implication of quantum mechanics. And same way, Einstein, Podolsky, and Rosen in 1915, I believe, there's a paper called EPR, Einstein, Podolsky, Rosen paper, which is which talks about this thing called entanglement.
Is this related to quantum entanglement?
Yes, quantum entanglement. So he's the first one to propose this thing called quantum entanglement. Okay, so the idea is pretty simple. Balls can spin, and particles have an equivalent of that called we call it spin. It's basically rotational angular momentum. But if the particle was physically spinning, it would be spinning many times the speed of light. So we don't think about it as physical spinning. It's just a quantity. It's called spin.
Okay.
It can be either one. It can be up or down, or spin up, spin down, right? In the terminology.
Spin up, spin down.
Yeah, it can be spin up or spin down. And so you can have a particle. So you can have these two particles that can be entangled. So they're emitted from the same place. So they come into close proximity and get entangled. And then what happens is I take one particle and you take one particle. I go to Andromeda. You stay on the Milky Way. So we're many, many light years apart. So what happens is that I open the box and I know that mine is spin up. I immediately know that there is a correlation to what your box would read. So I immediately know that your box would be down. Say your box is down.
Okay.
And then we do this experiment again, and we do it at a different bit, which is the important bit. Once that entanglement is broken, it's gone. Like you have to keep, like the correlations only emerge okay, anyways. So you observe these particles many, many times, and you see that they're correlated with each other.
Okay.
So every time this is down, that's up, or every time that's up, this is down.
Got it.
Or they're both up together, or they're both down together. Who cares? It is some pattern that links these two. So the creepy bit, the spooky bit that Einstein called spooky action at a distance is that...
Really? He called it spooky action at a distance?
Yes, spooky action at a distance. So he didn't have the... because you have the information about both systems, but it somehow doesn't tell you the information about the whole thing. So it seems like there are hidden variables that... get propagated instantaneously faster than the speed of light. And so all of these things raise interpretational questions. So these are the interpretations of quantum mechanics. This is where they come in. You have broadly, you have the many worlds interpretation, which I think is the most famous one. You have the Copenhagen interpretation, which I've already gone through, which says shut up and calculate. You have the de Broglie-Bohm pilot wave theory, which is a contribution from two scientists who are working a little further, ways apart. So initially started by Louis de Broglie and then finished by David Bohm.
Oh, okay. That way.
Yeah. And then you have another thing called dynamical collapse theories, which is by Girardi, Ramini, and Weber. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. It's called GRW. And there's another one called cubism or quantum solipsism. Cubism with a Q. A little poke at the art world.
Okay.
Yeah. So these are the different interpretations of quantum mechanics, right? So you have just a few lines about each one. The many worlds interpretation, like from the point of Schrodinger's cat. Let's look at the Schrodinger's cat from the point of many worlds, right? So you open the box. what happens is, what the Everettian interpretation says is that I'm an observer, but I'm also a collection of fundamental particles. So I'm also should have a quantum state.
Yes.
So in fact, it's the most mathematically simple of all the theories because it has only one equation. It only has the Schrodinger equation. It says that the Schrodinger equation never collapses.
Okay.
The waveform collapse doesn't happen. It's what happens is that we choose whether we're in one universe or another. So every time you make a decision, the world branches into many branches.
So what Hollywood has butchered a number of times in a number of movies.
Exactly. And this is where they got the idea from.
What is it? Is it Groundhog Day? What else?
Back to the Future to an
Back
extent,
to the
I guess.
Future,
No.
Inception? Inception?
No, you're right. No. Those movies didn't have multiverse in a sense. I think the Butterfly Effect
The Butterfly Effect.
might have had a. Anyway, so all of these ideas have been integrated into movies. So the idea is that when you open the box, the particle is in a superposition of having collapsed or not, like having emitted a radioactive particle or not. The cat is in a superposition of being alive or dead. Once you open the box, you go into a superposition of having seen the cat alive or having seen the cat dead. And the whole world goes into superposition of you saying that you have seen the cat dead or you've seen the cat alive. Okay? And all of these effects spread outwards so that the whole universe eventually splits and these two branches of the wave function become distinct. They grow orthogonally in the mathematics and they don't interact with each other. And that is what is the mathematical and physical meaning of many worlds. So every time you make whenever a quantum measurement is made, whenever a state vector goes to an eigenfunction, to use mathematical language, whenever that happens, that event basically causes the universe to branch. That is what many worlds says. Now, and of course, like you said, Hollywood has butchered this to no end. You have Bohmian pilot wave theory, which says that the wave function, there is both particle and wave. The wave function has guides the particle to its target, or something like that. So the wave function is a little guiding equation that. So in addition to the wave function, there's other information. But in Everett, there's only the wave function. Everett is a deterministic picture. The only probability in Everett is from the many worlds interpretation. The only probability is where you are. Like you don't know which branch you are. So it's self-locating uncertainty.
Okay.
You don't know which, like, so if I say to tell you, hey, flip a coin, what is the probability of getting heads or tails?
It's not 50-50.
No, but you would say, just to humor me,
50-50.
you would say 50-50, right? But in Everett, there'll be one universe where you got it heads and one universe where you got tails. So the probability of heads would be 100% and the probability of tails would be 100%. You just wouldn't know which branch you'd end up as. So the uncertainty is in a different place, slightly, subtly.
Oh, because you don't know what answer you're getting and you're kind of thrown there.
You don't know which answer to choose.
Okay.
It's saying that ultimately, everything that is allowed by the laws of physics will happen somewhere in some branch of the wave function.
It's interesting.
Yes. So that's one interpretation. Second interpretation is, like I said, Bohmian mechanics, which is a very obscure one, and it has equally obscure problems. It has its problem is that it says that there are variables that are hidden that are unobservable even in principle. So there are some facts about the world that are unmeasurable even in principle. So that's a problem with Bohmian mechanics. Then you have Girardi, Ramini, and Weber. Girardi, Ramini, and Weber. It's basically the idea of modifying Schrodinger's equation so that whenever you normally use quantum mechanics, you get the normal answers. When you have macroscopic objects in superposition or places where the theory becomes problematic, something called dynamical collapse happens. So there is a small, very, 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 very small probability that like you're talking like 10 to the 20 or 10 to the 30 or something like that, probability that a fundamental particle will collapse its own wave function.
Okay.
Okay, so that you have something and then it's for no reason, just for like,
Shits and giggles.
yeah, just like that meme, nobody, and then the electron just decides to like collapse its superposition. So that basically what happens, but it's a very unlikely event. But since we have Avogadro's number 10 to the 23 particles in our body, one of them will collapse randomly, and then that brings the whole thing down. Therefore, that's why I don't diffract across edges. I don't have quantum properties because one particle in me is collapsing and that brings down all the other particles. So I materialize into definite existence.
You're not a Jenga block.
Yeah, I'm not a Jenga block. Exactly.
Doesn't cancer function in a similar way? One cancer cell just spreads. Oh, that's spreading. Okay, fine. I got my answer.
Yeah. But in a similar way, exactly. It's
way.
in that kind of, yeah. So that's why it's called dynamical collapse. So the idea would be that I open the box. I mean, the cat is in a superposition of being alive and dead. And then eventually what happens is one of the atoms in the cat's body or in my body or in the box or somewhere collapses, and then that brings the whole thing down. I mean, the problem with this theory is that it messes with causality.
Okay, yeah, obviously.
Yeah, you can't have a causal, you don't know when the wave function is going to collapse.
Oh, so, okay. So quantum mechanics really does mess with entire cause and effect and correlation, how most people look at the world.
Yes. And that's why I think it's important for people to know these interpretations, because when people say, oh, quantum mechanics implies this, they're talking about one of these specific interpretations. And it's not an all-in. Like, yeah, quantum mechanics to an extent, no matter which version you believe, has all these craziness, but it's mutually exclusive craziness. You can explain it as one of these interpretations, but they all can't be correct.
It's like saying which biryani is the best to eat. Essentially, most of them are just food, but each one is exclusively different at the same time.
Yes. Essentially, it's food. It'll work. They all will give you the similar predictions, but they're cooked up so that we can find the better theories. So yeah, they're cooked up so that they can be different and find a better theory. Yeah.
Oh, right. Well, that's
the only thing left is, like I said, quantum solipsism, which I'm not going to talk about because I don't understand it, and it's really a mind scratcher because it's something to do with Bayesian personless probability theorem, which is the idea that it's not about the environment, or it's not about the observer. It is about the interaction between the observer and the environment. So that's why it's called quantum solipsism.
So after all this time, they have another theory saying that it's not what you're observing or what observation is. It's a relationship between both.
Yes.
Do these guys have no free time?
They have only free time, I think.
Oh God.
Yeah. And I'm not even talking about like the specific. These are just the broad, interpretations of the subject.
No God, I'm glad I didn't become a physicist on some level.
It's fun. Anyway, so that's a short foray into, like, not a short, but a very long foray into quantum mechanics.
A medium length foray, a small wave into quantum mechanics.
Yeah, a little jiggle.
A spin.
A little shimmy, a little spin, yeah. Is R spin on it? Get it?
Yes, yeah. Spell cubism with a K.
Oh God. Yeah. Cool. Catch you guys next episode, I guess. This is...
Oh, will we catch you next episode?
We will.
Oh yeah, we will. But will we?
No, definitely. We'll definitely collapse into a definite reality.
We will entangle with you next time quantumetrically.
Yes, quantum mechanically entangled with you.
Yes, that's exactly what I meant. He says that he darts right and left.
Cool. See you guys.
Thank you.